There comes a moment in life where you end up doing someone wrong. You hurt them pretty bad, but despite that, you don't really feel that you are in the wrong. If anything, you feel justified in doing so, building resentment for the other person to have over time. And as time passes, you realize what you did was bad, unjustifiable even. You aren't that same person anymore. However, the deed was already done. Years later, you meet the same person who you wronged, and even though you aren't in that negative mindset anymore, you drag someone else in that very place. An exact mirror of who you used to be, and the exact opposite of what you are now. That is the best way to summarize the relationship between Thorfinn and Hild in the story that is Vinland Saga. The dynamic that takes place between these two characters perfectly encapsulates the main message the story wants you to take to heart, that being giving up violence for the sake of peace. And as very positive of a message as that is, it is also very idealistic and difficult to obtain, especially in a time period where violence is glorified because of Vikings and their nature to fight alongside their belief to reach Valhalla, a place Vikings consider heaven. This very belief that was ingrained in millions of people led to endless pillaging, where so many people ended up as casualties of war and barbarism. And when all of that is around you, it is extremely difficult to break out of that cycle of violence. In hindsight, it is very commendable that Thor's figured out the true repercussions of endless bloodshed on his own without anyone telling him. He tried desperately to teach his son that in this world, he truly has no enemies. But in a culture that looks at violence as the answer to find glory, how could a kid Thorfinn be able to have the wisdom to see that? The story sets Thorfinn on this inescapable path where he had to get to that answer as he made mistakes, and truly ends up becoming the case as he witnesses Askeladd kill Thors in front of his very eyes. Now, it is no longer about Valhalla. It is no longer about being a true warrior. Now, it is all about revenge. At this point of the story, Thorfinn loses all empathy as all he is now concerned about is Askeladd. And even us, the audience, also focus on that as well, despite the countless innocents that get slaughtered in that journey of revenge. After Askeladd sacrifices his life, making his entire path of vengeance up until this very moment meaningless, Thorfinn is now at a point where he can finally reflect on everything he has done and find a new meaning. That of course ends up being Vinland, a place where swords won't be necessary, a place where peace can truly be achieved, a place where he can finally atone for his sins and all of the bodies he has accumulated over the years. The Farmland arc introduces the aspect of the story in which Thorfinn's new ideology and found resolve gets put onto scrutiny by people who ideologically oppose him, most notably King Canute, who also had to change in order to truly be considered a respectable king. Thorfinn's consistency and commitment into giving up the sword in order to achieve peace is respected by those around him. However, just because you have changed your views doesn't mean that every sin you have committed comes undone. Just when Thorfinn thought his journey into reaching Vinland was going to get somewhat easier, he has a very dark reminder by Hild that there are consequences to your actions. Years after a tragic moment where Thorfinn brutally kills Hild's father, she finally confronts his killer with Thorfinn almost a mirror being placed as Thorfinn is on the other end of revenge, a cycle that he himself created in the process of trying to get Askeladd. The contrast between who Thorfinn is now and Hild is staggering as she calls him a murderous beast who she needs to kill. The resentment that she displays couldn't possibly be more clear as she can't seem to let the past go, understandably so. Thorfinn's words as he committed his sin couldn't have hit Hild deeper than they did. She has Thorfinn play a dangerous game of cat and mouse using an antidote as bait for the stew. Thorfinn in this situation is truly at her mercy, as all he can do is beg for a chance to atone for all the pain he caused, not just to her, but to everyone else as well. But how can she forgive something as grand as the murder of her father? Looking at the relationship she had with her father, how could she put that aside and give Thorfinn a chance at atonement? How could she forget the pain and humiliation she went through, even more so with how merciless Thorfinn truly was? Forgiveness was something that was truly out of the equation for her. She even tries to humiliate Thorfinn using his exact same words to try to satiate the anger and resentment she had for years. Thorfinn's dreams and aspirations seem to reach a dead end, as how could he say that he is a new man after all the people he killed who had their own goals and aspirations in life? What felt like fate giving Thorfinn a chance after Hild sees her dead father and mentor, who both had very strong beliefs of forgiveness and giving up on hatred. She decides to give Thorfinn some time to prove to her that he isn't the same mindless killer that she knew him all these years to be. This is Thorfinn's ultimate test, as now more than ever, he can't fail or slip up on his ideals, as the exemplification of all of the pain and suffering he caused to the world is now watching his every move, ready to kill him if he isn't fully committed to atone. Even killing for the sake of self-defense feels out of the question for Thorfinn, and the Baltic Sea War not only pushes Thorfinn to his absolute limits with the many confrontations he ends up dealing with, but also almost his own feelings of vengeance rekindled, or feel like the ultimate test the story puts Thorfinn through after all of these years of putting his anger and rage towards Askeladd. Thorfinn finally finds out that the man responsible for his father's death was actually Floki, and despite the hypocrisy, Thorfinn can't help but feel rage so deep that makes him afraid of what he will do to Floki. And even though Hild tries to demean Thorfinn, he responds that he wonders when will he be reborn, and that he wants to be someone who is kinder, gentler, and strong. At the peak of the war, where chaos is absolutely everywhere, he finally faces Floki in close quarters with rage resembling his past self. Baldur trying to protect his grandfather and Hild holding Thorfinn basically at gunpoint with her crossbow. It seems as if Thorfinn will give in to his sinful and violent self once again. However, Baldur's words of weakness and vulnerability to save Floki snaps Thorfinn out of it and manages to do the one thing his younger self wouldn't even conceive of doing, and that is to move on. As Thorfinn snaps the sword in half, Hild lowers her crossbow in silence as she observes how far Thorfinn is willing to go in order to atone. Even after the fact, Thorfinn mumbles to himself how close he truly was to failing. On a rooftop, Thorfinn faces Garm for the second time, and as Hild watches from a distance, she sees Thorfinn having fun as he drops the knife, leaving both her and Garm perplexed. Garm rushes at Thorfinn, and after using the same headbutt that Askeladd did to him, he puts a stop to Garm. He reunites with Hild as she says that he survived once again by not killing Garm. Time passes by and Thorfinn is now in the place he calls Vinland. He's in a relationship with Gudrid, has built a decent relationship with the natives, and now is on his way to become a father. The journey that Thorfinn has been on was not an easy one by any stretch of the imagination, and his mission on making Vinland a peaceful land isn't done. Hild at this point has observed Thorfinn for a long time, seeing if he was truly a changed man or if he still is the exact monster who she unfortunately encountered years ago. The drive that Thorfinn has in order to create a peaceful land free of violence can't be questioned by anyone, let alone her. With that, Hild figures that she can't keep clinging to her anger any longer. The man that she was once itching to kill was already dead a long time ago. She tells Thorfinn that she has borne witness to his atonement. She turns around and says the 3 words that truly marks how far Thorfinn has come since he was a rabid, vengeful teenager full of anger and lack of remorse. I forgive you. Thorfinn slowly walks up to her, absolutely shaken in disbelief, as he then starts weeping. He kneels down as Hild's anger is now gone. After going to the ends of the earth to release her from the cycle of violence and vengeance, she calls Thorfinn a true warrior. Words that he couldn't hear from his own father, but words he hears from the person who he once hurt badly, finally signifying that he has fully earned her forgiveness. The struggle that Thorfinn went through in his early life not only damaged him, but others around him, and unfortunately, those people were innocent, Hild being one of them. She managed to live in order to get her revenge, but ultimately, she ended up witnessing firsthand that atonement that seems impossible can truly be achieved to those that seek it with sincerity. Thorfinn's sins and mistakes will never go away. The pain and suffering he caused will forever exist. However, the path to truly right your wrongs is to face your past head on and prove that you are a better person, not just to the people that you ended up hurting, but to yourself as well. And in that process is how true atonement can be achieved. This is why I will forever hold chapter 191 from Vinland Saga in my heart as one of the greatest chapters in the medium of manga and one of the greatest relationship dynamics between 2 characters I've ever seen with Thorfinn and Hild. I want to know your thoughts on this relationship dynamic in chapter 191 of Vinland Saga in the comment section down below, so don't be afraid of leaving a comment. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a like and subscribing to my channel. And with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. See you guys next time.